Welcome to episode 26 of Full Court Magic. I am your host, Don Strouble, the Orlando Magic beat writer for the Orlando Magic Roundtable. And as always, this episode is powered by Roundtable Sports. You know where that link is by now. Please click it in the description and join our sites if you haven't yet. And I am joined by my friend and colleague, Andrew Cherico. You guys have not seen us together in a couple of months, and a lot has changed with this Magic team in that time. Andrew, how you doing, my friend? And what do you think about what has transpired since we last went on the air together?
Don, what's going on, man? Last time we did this, we were a dynamic duo in Orlando. The Magic were playing the Kings. They pulled out the win in that one. It's been a while since we've been back here. I think it's good now that I'm here because I would say there's a lot to speak about, Don. When the offseason comes, rumors start swirling around, all the speculation goes crazy. Everybody wonders who's going to be the next best player landing on everybody's team. But we know one thing for certain is that the Magic got their new head coach. He's going to be the next head coach for at least the next 5 years. And I think Sweeney was an excellent hire. I think you look at the candidates that the Magic had. You're talking about Billy Donovan, more experienced in the game, but hasn't provided the greatest results in the NBA. You can say due to team fit and the kind of player acquisitions that he had, but never really reached that next level outside of his successful run with Oklahoma. And also, you think about the other candidates that were brought up, Jeff Van Gundy, long time around the NBA, hadn't been a head coach for a very long time. You think about Jason Kidd, I had him as like a black horse candidate, somebody who's experienced, the current Hall of Famer. And honestly, had some great seasons with the Dallas Mavericks. But when you look at what the Magic are trying to build, they want a guy who is personable to their players, like Coach Mosley was, but a guy who's going to hone in on the X's and O's more than I think Mosley was kind of doing. I do think the Magic, what's certain is that we know the Magic team can play good defense. They have that foundation. Can Sean Sweeney elevate their offense, Don?
Yeah, no, and like you said, Magic bring in Sean Sweeney. The announcement of his appointment to be the franchise's 16th head coach was made on Monday. Jeff Waltman put out a statement, and then he went on the Game On show with Brandon Kravitz and Mike Bianchi to talk about it more at length on Tuesday. And yeah, I agree with you. I think this is a good hire, and it's interesting because this is the second time now that the Magic have gone with a rookie head coach that was involved with the Dallas Mavericks coaching tree, because based on what I was seeing as Mosley was taking the job with Orlando back in July 2021, Sweeney was going into his first year as an assistant with Jason Kidd on that Mavericks staff. And so you get two defensive oriented young minds that come from a good organization, and now Sweeney with an even better one, I would say, with the Spurs, who find themselves down 1-0 to the New York Knicks. But this is a guy that, yeah, he's a rookie head coach, but he has so much experience in his 15 years in the league, back from starting with a video coordinator when they were still the New Jersey Nets, weren't even moved to Brooklyn yet. And then, Milwaukee Bucks was pivotal in developing a young Giannis, who we will talk more about later in the show. Worked with former Coach of the Year Dwayne Casey on the Detroit Pistons staff before going to Dallas and coaching Luka, and now with Victor Wembanyama in San Antonio. And so I do think that this will be a positive impact hire, especially for the likes of Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Desmond Bane, and Jalen Suggs, that young nucleus that is still trying to find a way to take the next step after making the playoffs the last 3 years in a row, but never being able to punch their way out of that first round.
Yeah, Don, I think you mentioned it best. If you're talking about teams looking for their next head coach and they want a young and up and coming talent, Sean Sweeney checked all of those boxes for the Magic. I mean, you're talking about the organization that he is coming from currently in the NBA Finals. I know the Magic would much rather be there right now than hiring Sweeney, but they are hoping that he can take them to that next level. The Spurs are a top class organization. They have produced nothing but winners for as long as I've been alive, at least. So I definitely do think the Spurs and that kind of championship connection definitely had some part in play of it. And I think it was really cool. When he spoke about John, excuse me, Weltman on the podcast with Brandon Kravitz. He said it was really cool that the Spurs allowed Sweeney to interview with Weltman and kind of get in those meetings, despite them being in the NBA Finals and during the time the Western Conference Finals. You said it best. Sweeney is well respected around the league. The Orlando Magic posted some media quotes from some of the headlining voices in the NBA. We're talking about Mitch Johnson, current Spurs head coach, Giannis Antetokounmpo, star player on the Bucks, Luka Doncic. Just so many top level talent around the league with nothing but good things to say about Sweeney. It kind of has to make you feel good about the direction that the Magic are heading in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And, Weltman was honest. He said that it was a unique experience, something he had never gone through, and trying to negotiate and bring a coach in that was at this stage of the postseason. Because, when you think about a Billy Donovan or a Jeff Van Gundy, their seasons are over. So they were readily available for interviews. At least are imagining that they were readily available for interviews and discussions. And I feel like, Billy Donovan was kind of this running favorite even before Mosley got fired, and that only amplified once Jamal Mosley was fired. But I feel like in a way he might have been the safe choice, right? Like it was kind of concerning the aberrant lack of success that he had in Chicago with some decent rosters, very flawed rosters, but decent enough to where you think that they would at least post more winning seasons. But I believe he only had one winning season in his 6 years in Chicago, and they were bounced in the first round. Other than that, they were kind of like a perennial play-in team sneaking into that 9-10 spot. Um, and this is also a guy, let's not forget, burned the Magic at the last minute, almost 20 years ago, in favor of returning to Florida. So, while I'm sure the organization and him are on cool terms, it's not something that you forget. And so I think that they felt more secure and more optimistic in bringing in a young coach like Sweeney, even more so than a Jeff Van Gundy, who had great success long ago, but that was before both you and I were even alive. I mean, this dude took like almost 20 years off to do TV from coaching and is just now getting back into it over the last couple seasons. So Sweeney is a young mind who Weltman, going to paraphrase him here, but I think he said that he breaks the game down into measurables, these kind of like bite-sized pieces that are easy to ingest, and can really construct the makings of a good basketball program here in the city beautiful.
Yeah, kind of wanted to add a couple more things on Jeff Waltman when he spoke about Sean Sweeney on the game. I think it's what's really important about Sweeney is that when you kind of mentioned how much personable how personable he is with the players, how he breaks the game down into small measurables, stuff that's easy to comprehend. You talk about the Spurs team; they have been one of the best defensive teams the entire season, and in this playoffs, you can especially see it pay off. That's a lot to do with Sean Sweeney and the system that he is running with that team. They are very locked in. They are getting into it. I know it wasn't the results they wanted in game one, but still, I expect the Spurs to bounce back and very strong. Another thing I wanted to add about Sean Sweeney was you mentioned it, Don. Billy Donovan, the safe play, could be a floor raiser, but I'm not sure the Magic ceiling gets much better. Now with Sean Sweeney, we don't know what the Magic's floor can be, but I certainly believe he can bring the Magic to a higher ceiling than Billy Donovan can, just due to his experience and I think the momentum he has coming into this position.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. And yeah, you bring up a good point about Sweeney's defensive acumen. He serves as the associate head coach on Mitch Johnson's staff, making him the top guy. And he was in charge of the Spurs defense this year, and he led them to the third best defensive rating in the regular season, second best in the playoffs, only behind their NBA Finals opponent in the Knicks. And so that is an area where the Magic really need to get back, because I feel like they lost a part of their defensive identity this past season. I can look at the statistics and I can tell you by my eye test that it wasn't quite the same as it's been in years past. I believe they fell out of the top 10 in defensive rating when they were consistently in that top 3 to 5 range under Mosley these last couple years. And the offense stayed league average for the most part in the regular season, and then the Magic had the worst offense of the 16 playoff teams. So, it will be interesting. And that was another thing that Mike Bianchi he posed the question to Jeff Weltman, like basically, what do you say about the people who were concerned about the offense and you hired another defensive mind? And he went on this whole soliloquy about how the NBA works, but really just getting back to how Sweeney can break things down. And I also believe who he fills his staff with is going to be really important. Who is going to be his supporting cast on that sideline to help coach these players also and really bring together a good cohesive unit.
Yeah, Don, more about Sweeney. I think the biggest concern is it doesn't matter how good of a defensive head coach he is. It doesn't matter how much he can elevate the offense. We know what this team can be when they're healthy. That is the biggest point. Can the Magic stay healthy enough for Sweeney to take him to the next level? A lot of people feel some kind of way about Mosley being fired because they felt like he never had a true chance with the team being fully healthy. A lot of people said it. I think even Jeff Weltman said it on the show. The Magic were one injury away from making it to the second round of the playoffs, and it's hard to disagree with that when they see how much of an impact Franz Wagner had in that series against the Detroit Pistons, Don. But what I do think is that if this Magic team can stay healthy, you said it best. The Magic are supposed to be a top 5 defensive team every year, no matter what. That's just how the roster is constructed. There isn't enough firepower on offense to be an offense first team. They are defense first, no matter what. Now, what you can hope for is that the Magic can maintain that top 5 defensive status and elevate their offense to around the mid-league level, being average at offense. That is a championship recipe. If the Magic can even crack the top 14 in offense in the NBA, that is sufficient enough to make a deep run into the playoffs, especially when you have a playoff riser like Paolo Banchero, when you have a glue guy like Desmond Bane, and it's just the variables now. Can Franz and Jalen stay healthy? Can they put together a solid squad? Maybe even get some more three-point shooting pieces in free agency. You said it. Add some good assistant coaches. I believe Joe Punzi's still on the roster. Excuse me if I'm wrong. But we know God Shamgod made his exit too.
Yeah, so I will make this point real quick about Weltman and the injury concerns before we move on to our next topic. I feel like the Magic, especially Weltman, lean on that a little bit too hard. And if you're waiting for your team to be 100% healthy, you might be waiting forever. I mean, definitely the Magic were dealt an unlucky hand with the Franz Wagner calf strain. I do think that changed the dynamic a lot in that Pistons series, but it doesn't excuse the flaws of this team. And we'll talk about that more later in the segment when we get to free agency. And I don't think that Weltman can let because I've been hearing this. I've been hearing this is his go-to excuse, Drew. This is what he always says. I feel like he talked about it at media day, and that's how he ended the season and everything in between. Like Jeff Weltman loves the injury excuse, and while there is some merit there, again, it can't excuse like not making a move to help. And when you look at it, I mean, Desmond Bane played all 82 games for the first time in his career and was putting up like all-star level numbers. He played in that game 6 collapse when the Magic scored 19 points in the second half against the Pistons. Paolo Banchero only missed 10 games. The two guys, I mean, Jalen Suggs, he played somewhere in the 50s, and it was bad with Franz. But for the most part, I know AB missed some time, but he was back for the playoffs. Like, the Magic have to be careful with this injury excuse, especially if they're going to let that paralyze what they're willing to do in terms of making moves to bolster this roster. And so it's going to be an important offseason for Jeff Weltman.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, Don. I think injuries are going to happen no matter what. We've seen the Spurs battle through injuries in this playoffs without De'Aaron Fox for a little bit of time, but now he's back. He's still playing hampered up. You see Jalen Brunson getting banged up in game 1 with the Knicks, but he gets right back out there. Injuries are always going to happen. It's just what can you do around it? And that's where you make a great point. I got to say this because I don't know if it came off the wrong way, but Franz Wagner being injured does not excuse the Magic blowing a 3-1 lead to the Pistons. By no means. You have to win one game out of the next three, and they couldn't do that. That
Yeah.
is flat out failure. There's no other way to put it. Disappointment and failure. That's why a change needed to happen. No matter how much you wanted, maybe people wanted to keep Mosley or see that he was really connecting well with the players. As good as a guy as he could have been, he didn't have the X's and O's to let the Magic win one more game. I know he wasn't out there on the court himself, and some of the players heavily underperformed, especially some, you said it, major quarter collapses. But that's a foundational thing that needs to be changed. And that's what I think the Magic are aiming for. Never to let that happen again under Sweeney, because, man, that was a rough watch.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. So, we'll see. Obviously, the Mosley era has ended. We're ushering in a new one with Sean Sweeney. Team has not released the details of his contract. The Magic are generally hush hush on that, but like you and I believe here, somewhere in that 5-year range, you want to give the new coach a proper runway to get things rolling. So we'll see. Sean Sweeney will be officially introduced after these NBA finals are over, and I'm sure we will be back on this show to talk about him. Moving on. So with this Sweeney hire, rumblings for a big fish have just gotten a little more momentum. Andrew, what do you got for me on these Giannis to Orlando rumors?
Wow, oh wow, we reached that point in the offseason, Don. The
It
NBA
always
finals
happens.
aren't even over yet. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been around the NBA just murmurs of chatter. Maybe the Orlando Magic are potential suitors for Giannis Antetokounmpo, and there is some background merit. They're not just shooting a gun into the air. There is some merit about it. You have the foundational ties with Jeff Weltman, with John Hammond on the Bucks executive. He played a huge part in getting Giannis to the Bucks. You talking about you want Giannis to play for a championship contender. Put it how you want, but if Giannis is on the Magic, they are a championship contender in my mind. You don't bring a player of that caliber and don't automatically just become championship contenders. That is the guy you bring in to become one, and I think he can instantly elevate the Magic. And this is not my opinion, but I'm just saying what I've heard. You think about now, this is the latest part about Sean Sweeney, his connectional ties with Giannis Antetokounmpo. Even on the social media posts, Giannis posts that he's one of his best friends. He's a great winner. He knows how to win. All those things kind of indicate ooh, is this maybe have some truth to it? Is there some kind of vision of Giannis going to the Magic? And while there could be some background merit and some mutual interest, personally, Don, I don't think it happens. To me, it'll be it's risky. It's a very risky move for the Magic. Giannis is entering his late prime now. He's already an NBA championship, two-time MVP. He's proven all that he's needed to. Of course, he wants to win more. But if you trade, because if you think about it, Don, the Magic don't have any more draft picks. They've traded majority of their draft capital last year's offseason. You're talking about 4 first-round picks for Desmond Bane and another abundance of second-round picks to trade up for Noah Penda. The Magic just don't have that capital now to move big pieces for big players. They put all their eggs in one basket for Desmond Bane. But for Giannis, if they wanted to make a significant move like that, they would need to have trade either, in my opinion, Paolo Banchero or Franz Wagner. I don't see a world where the Bucks don't get one of those players for Giannis Antetokounmpo. And if you really break it down, what's one of the Magic's main issues? Shooting the ball, perimeter spacing. Giannis doesn't really help with that. They would need to get another championship level caliber player and surround Giannis, kind of change the foundation of the team and surround him around more shooters this free agency. You're going to kind of blow up the system if they do that. And I just don't think Jeff Weltman and Sean Sweeney are that progressive enough to make that happen. And we know they play a conservative role, especially Jeff Weltman in free agency and in the trade market. We know Weltman has historically been one of the more conservative presidents in all of basketball. So even that Bane trade was kind of mind blowing for saying, wow, first round picks. That's something we'd have never expected Jeff Weltman to do, but now that here the Magic are. But what I do think is important about this rumors is that I just don't see Weltman wanting to trade away Banchero and Franz Wagner for Giannis, blowing up the core of this team doesn't seem ideal, Don. It doesn't seem like that's something you want to do. It's going to lower the championship window. You're only going to have 2 or 3 more seasons, and potentially, we don't even know if Giannis would sign an extension with the Magic. You have their core four locked up of Jalen Suggs, Paolo, and Desmond Bain. So my opinion, I don't think it happens. I know there's been some rumors about it. We've heard a lot of background rumors, but I think the Magic are going to pass on this one.
Yeah, where there's smoke, there can be fire, but I don't know if it's any more than just a small flame at this point. I'm with you. I don't agree with the idea that Giannis is coming to Orlando, and you make all the great points. Yeah, he's friends with Sweeney. He loves Orlando cities, or not Orlando cities, but Florida cities. He said publicly before that, Florida has the best spots, and, it would be a good spot for him and his young kids. You got the parks, and like, it's a fun story hypothetically, but is it the right move for this franchise? No, it's not, because you get, Giannis, who would be a rental, and any team that goes after him this offseason to pry him away from the Bucks, they are doing it in the hopes that he signs an extension. Because as of right now, he is a rental. I believe after this coming season, he can bounce in free agency if he wants. You're not trading away your franchise player in Paolo Banchero, your homegrown guy, for that. Franz Wagner, little more leeway for discussion there, but again, I'm with you. I just don't see them giving up on 2 young ascending players for a guy who's on the wrong end of his prime and is also injury prone, with most of his game relying on his freakish athleticism. I just don't see it. And again, like you said, another good point: the lack of shooting. And Jeff Weltman, I've talked about this before. The Desmond Bain trade was the Magic's big swing. It already happened last summer. That's it. I don't think we're seeing another one. So, yeah, I think the Giannis rumors need to be put to bed. And I think that gives us a good transition into our next topic. So, if no Giannis, Drew, what should this team do this offseason in terms of bolstering the roster?
Yeah, Don, we know that this Magic team is just a few $1 million underneath the second apron. They are facing strict financial restrictions right now, and this is a Magic team that just a few seasons ago had all the financial liberty in the world. Now they're playing some really tight games on some really tight ropes. It's important that the Magic, I think we should first talk about contract extensions, though. And we know there isn't much happening in the draft this season. They believe they have 1 second-round pick, the 46th pick in the second round. Good luck with that being a super impact player. You can always get a rotational developmental guy, but I
This
don't
ain't
think the
football.
Magic could turn into Giannis,
Yeah, yeah,
Nikola
this ain't
Jokic with
football.
their second round pick.
Right.
But what I do think is that the Magic need to focus on the current young talent they have on their roster right now. The number one eligible player for an extension is Anthony Black. That's somebody that you want on this roster. You've seen him improve over the past few seasons. And I think this season he had some really great flashes of what he can do with a full-time role. And if he stays completely healthy throughout the season, I think he had his best season as a player for the Magic. I think even if sometimes the stats didn't show it, his poise on the court, his intangibles, getting to the ball, getting to the rim, and even shooting the ball from deep sometimes was really impressive. And he kind of helped the Magic out during a lot of regular season games that got him into the play-in. But Don, what I do know is also the Magic have two contract extension eligible players in Desmond Bain, Goga Batadze. I don't believe they need to be signed this offseason, but that's something to keep on their mind if they want to lock them in for future purposes. Now, Don, to me, the big question for the Magic offseason is Jonathan Isaac. The Magic can save around $14 million if they waive/cut Jonathan Isaac before June 28th. Don, do you think that happens?
I think it has to at this point. This has been an albatross contract. Even when Isaac's healthy, he is just not an impact player on the floor, at least not in the way that he was when he was showing flashes. But you were talking about a consistently injured player that, again, it just is not giving you the worth of this contract. There was one point last year, Drew, or just this past season, where they had, I believe it was 22 million tied up in Jonathan Isaac and Tyus Jones to average a combined 4 points per game. That is, it's a money pit, and it's not the makings of the kind of bench players that you would want going into a playoff series, especially against the number one seed. So that they have to find a way to move off of him, Drew. It's non-negotiable.
Yeah, you talk about what Jonathan Isaac was to Orlando versus what he is to Orlando. You go back a few years, Don, he's one of the most ascending, one of the best defensive players in the league, can guard the 1 through the 5, one of the true few players who can do that. The perimeter mobility to guard the fast guards, the length and the size to guard the centers of the NBA. But what took him out, Don? What else other than injuries for this Magic roster? Uh, Jonathan Isaac missed basically an entire season. It just has struggled to play consistent games. And although the past 2 years he's played more and more, he just hasn't been able to find the consistent minutes that he has to offer in the Magic system. We know he isn't a threat offensively anymore. And on defense, he's slowed down some since putting on some weight, Don. We know that they wanted him to bolster up to be a primary front court defender between power forward and center. And I don't think that's really paid off well for the Magic. I think he was best when he was a bit slimmer. But just overall, I think the Jonathan Isaac experiment is over. We know he was an early first round pick for the Magic, but the Magic have since then found success with the other first round picks and have shifted the franchise in a new direction. In an ideal world, Jonathan Isaac returns to being an all NBA defender and one of the more consistent players around the rim, but that's just not a realistic opportunity for him anymore at this point, in my opinion. And I do think the Magic could use some of that low salary cap extension money, mid-tier level money to sign some potential impact players in free agency. Two that comes to my mind immediately. I think you want to continue to get more guard scoring and perimeter depth. Tim Hardaway Jr. maybe, or maybe even Gary Trent. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah. I think that, wing defenders, especially in the playoffs, make or break a team. We've seen the teams that did not have adequate wing defenders, and they're no longer playing. But that's, one thing the Knicks have. That's one thing that the Spurs have. And so that's why these teams have made it that far. And Jonathan Isaac, like having that ability to go out on the perimeter and guard a smaller player or be able to rim protect to some degree was good, but he is this team's longest tenured player. As far as I know, I believe he was a pre-COVID draft pick. And at some point, you got to pull the plug on this, especially for the money that he's being paid. Because if they keep him on roster, he's set to make 14.5 million. Same in 2027. Like, you can't. It's not worth it. You have to find out. Even if you waive him, I'm not sure what the financial cap hit implications would be. Like, they should bite the bullet now to benefit from it later. And I just don't think that, especially when you have an Anthony Black who's extension eligible, I don't think that Jonathan Isaac should be in the future plans. And there are other players out there, like you said, a Gary Trent Jr. There's other serviceable, bigger guards / smaller power forwards that could be good wing defenders and maybe 3-and-D guys for this team to help elevate it, even if it's only marginally.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're going on that, Don. To me, it just makes the sense to move on. I think the Jonathan Isaac experiment is over. You mentioned the Magic just are a few $1 million underneath the second apron. If they can cut around that $14 million, I think there's some pretty serviceable guys because if the Magic want to compete for a championship, they need to at least remain a first apron team. There's no doubt about that. They're not going underneath it. Once again, avoiding it with all the extensions and all the players that they have getting increased contract deals. I always say I love this contract, though. I love Jalen Suggs' contract. I think the Magic did a great job on not only his longevity, but his financial status. It kind of evens itself out over the years. He got a lot of the money up front and kind of lowers towards the back end.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think the Magic need to utilize pull all their strings, use all their phone calls, and make something happen. Get this 14 million out and trying to bring in some quality players with the limited amount of money that they have, because that's what championship teams do.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big team already that's got big guys that can defend on the wing. I mean, we saw Franz Wagner absolutely terrorize Kate Cunningham when he was healthy in that series. What this team needs is a point guard, man. They need a backup point guard off the bench that can facilitate offense. And Tyus Jones wasn't the answer, and I don't think Javon Carter is long term either, though I do think he's a good locker room guy. They need a legitimate player in there that can at least facilitate some, and so maybe Anthony Black is that. I think he's more of a shooting guard, and he's listed as one. But some of those 6'7" point guard capabilities are in there, and we can talk briefly about him being extension eligible. I was reading yesterday on Spotrac, so shout out to them, which I have pulled up currently. I believe I don't know who wrote the article, so forgive me on this, but they went through the 2023 draft class and who's extension eligible, and their prediction was that uh, Anthony Black should get 4 years, 80 million, no extra guarantees. They think that he's gotten to a point where he is extension eligible, but he's not in this upper echelon of guys that's going to get a bunch of money. So I think that's a fair deal. What say you?
Yeah, I think if you get Anthony Black on that kind of deal, that's a win-win for the Magic. I mean, you're paying him for his floor, but he can certainly elevate into an even better player. I think we've seen those flashes. And Don, I'm going to have to say with this point guard experiment with the Magic, I'm not sure if they're ever going to figure it out. I
Oh my
don't think they're
God.
ever going to get their playmaking point guard down. I just think the way that this team is built, who it's surrounded by, that's just not the system that they have going for them. In my opinion, I think you've seen what the Magic get when they try to go for the lower tier playmaking point guards, just people who aren't really serviceable for what they're running for their system. I do think it's time that the Magic move on from getting a playmaking point guard and just go all in on surrounding Paulo and Franz with 3-and-D shooters. Have two shooting guards at the point guard, shooting guard spot. Have Franz and Paulo run up the ball up the court. Jalen Suggs from time to time because we know he can play make.
Yeah.
I do think, in my opinion, you can disagree,
No,
but I
no.
do
I
think
mean,
it's time for the Magic to move on from trying to get a low tier playmaking point guard because I just think in recent years it hasn't worked. It just hasn't planned out how they think he would. You bring in a floor general off the bench. You think he would facilitate the game better. Think the bench would be a little bit stronger. But each time, every offseason, we're proved once again that having a playmaking point guard is one of the most expensive premiums in the NBA. And you're not going to
sure.
get a valuable player, for, especially what the Orlando Magic trying to do, at cheap.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, there's definitely options out there, and I really thought the Tyus Jones move would pan out better than it did. That was such a massive bust. It was pretty difficult to watch him fall off the way he did because he's still a pretty young player for the most part, and could have some good years ahead of him. But yeah, it's one of those things where they certainly haven't got it right recently. I can't argue with you there, but I do think at some point, um, especially for a bench unit. Like I know that they had Desmond Bain out there a lot, but I think that they could benefit from a veteran like a Russell Westbrook or someone who really knows how to run an offense that you can get cheap. Obviously, Westbrook is latent with his own flaws, but just having maybe giving it one more try, but it's got to be at the right price point because this team is working thin on the margins, like we've talked about. Is there anyone else that you wanted to bring up? I know Desmond Bain's extension eligible, but like the Magic picked up the bulk of that contract when they
Yeah.
traded for him. I don't even think like he signed through 28, 29. It looks like based on Spotrac here. Um, Goga Batadze, maybe, but I think that backup center is another area. Center in general is another area where this team could upgrade. What say you?
I don't think I have anything too much more to add because I think you hit all the points on that one.
Yeah,
I definitely do think the Magic position at center does need an improvement. I do think Wendell Carter Jr. showed why he can be one of the best big men at his price, and then one of the most underwhelming big men at his price. We've seen the ups and downs of Wendell Carter Jr., but like I said, this team is fully built around 3-and-D and Paolo Banchero being able to be the primary ball handler, especially in playoff environments.
yeah,
Not ideal, what you're kind of going for, but just around the circumstances that they have, the Magic, I do think need to get another 3-and-D wing defender. You're talking about the Spurs. Who do they have coming off of their bench? They have so many talented players. Dylan Harper, who I think should start next game if it's just me. I'm just saying. Harrison Barnes, Luke Cornett. Those are guys that, aren't making big money. Obviously, Dylan Harper is, but you're talking about the Harrison Barnes and Luke Cornett of the world. They are playing valuable minutes in these
Yeah.
NBA finals, especially Cornett, some of the great defensive plays that he's made. On the Knicks, Deuce McBride, Jordan Clarkson, Landry Shamet. Those are the kind of guys you need for a deep playoff run. Can the Magic secure those players? Can the Magic get those kind of guys? I do think Anthony Black can be that guy for the Magic. I do think he can be one of those guys, but they need a few more.
Yeah, he's definitely a six-man spark plug. And yeah, they got to look at the Mo Wagner situation, Wendell Carter Jr., Goga Batadze. There's a lot here to consider, but overall, I think Magic fans should be excited for this Sean Sweeney hire. I think it's a step in the right direction. We'll see what kind of system he's able to implement, especially with whatever staff he chooses to bring in. And I imagine that after he gets introduced, you and I will be jumping back on for another episode to talk about his comments and his vision for the team. But we might have to wait a couple weeks for that because I know the Spurs lost last night, but I see this series going 6 or 7 games. And if that's the case, Sweeney will not be introduced until like the 3rd or 4th week of June, towards the end of the month for sure. But keep up with us via Roundtable, guys. As always, we appreciate your support on this podcast. We appreciate your readership and joining. You're only helping us grow. And as always, thanks for tuning in. Andrew, you got anything else?
Don, thank you for having me on, man. Like I said, thankfully, school semester ended. You're out of school. Congratulations on
Thanks.
that, man.
Thank you.
We'll definitely be around a lot more on the show. We have a little bit more time to get into the deep dives about the Orlando Magic, and I think it will be a juicy offseason with a bunch of things to talk about. So I can't wait to be back. Thank you for everybody who's been reading and joining the sites. It's been meant a lot.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Well, all right. As always, thank you guys. I'm Don Strouble. This is Andrew Cherico, and this has been Full Court Magic. See you next time.